My name is DannyGesundheit. I'm a teacher at Kew High School. I've been teaching here since 2007, so that makes it probably 8 years. Prior to that, I was teaching at a school in Williamstown, Altona North and Newport. It was a multi-campus school called Bayside Secondary College. I was involved in the project through Frank Ferretti, the other media teacher. But we were both also involved with another computer games project that Deacon was running probably 5 or 6 years ago, and there are different people running that project. So when this project started up, Frank did it by himself for a year, and then I joined the following year. So I was sort of involved in the last 2 years of the project. How did I get introduced to the project was that Frank told me that there was, Deacon was running a sort of a research project into computer games. Also, because we'd been involved with a similar project previously, which was looking at computer games in literacy, from a literacy perspective, I had some familiarity with it. But as somebody who doesn't play computer games, I was a bit hesitant to be involved in the project because I guess as a teacher, you want to have some background knowledge, content, and I wasn't very familiar with it. So I was a bit hesitant, and I was teaching Year 9 media. So also I was a bit hesitant because I wasn't sure how I was going to introduce it in the classroom as a sort of a project-based activity. Year 9 media is a semester-based subject and the kids don't really have it very often. So when I was asked to be involved in it, I tried to find a way to link it with, say, for example, photography or something else that could fit in with this idea of gaming and games. So my initial response was that I was hesitant, reluctant, unsure, a bit nervous, because when I spoke to Frank about it and then Joe, it was pretty much, you can do whatever you like, anything you like. There were no restrictions at all. So in the first instance, I decided to create a project using skills that the students had learned in photography and Photoshop. So they had some basic skills in how to take a photo, using framing, how to frame a photo correctly and analyse a photo. And they were quite good at that. And then also I taught them how to use Photoshop, some basic Photoshop skills. So I decided that they would be sort of, rather than game makers, they would be game designers, specifically for front covers of games, fictitious games. And so the kids were given an outline of a fictitious game to do with bullying, and they were basically the graphic designer, I suppose, photographer, production designer, and also game maker, I suppose, because they had to create the characters, the sort of narrative of the game, which will all appear on the front and back cover of the game. So that was the first project I did, and the kids, did some fantastic things. Given the limited amount of time and skill that they had, but they seemed to enjoy it. We did some preliminary activities to do with gaming and game covers, like what makes a good game's cover, what are the features of a game's cover, and we did some analysis of that, and then they went out and took photos and photoshopped, and then they presented it to the class as a presentation, and that went well. And then I also did a slightly different project the next semester, which was more based on trying to get kids to make a game for those kids that were good at using computer software, or alternatively, kids could make a documentary video about people's perspective on gaming. Adults, children, teenagers, the students had to interview a certain number of people They had to include themselves in it, and then we had like a conference. I mean, this was my silly idea to try and turn it into like a gaming conference, and they did presentations. So the people who made games, they showed us their games, and then the people who made videos also presented their videos to the class, and they were assessed. And Joe came along to one of the sessions, as well as one of the primary school teachers from Fitzroy North. And look, some of the games were very basic, but some of them were terrific. And a couple of the videos were also excellent. You know, again, given the limited amount of time and resources, but the kids seemed to be engaged by the project. And there was a follow-up from that where that particular Year 9 class went to Fitzroy North to see the work of the primary school kids and what they were doing, because the teacher from Fitzroy North came here. And I would have to say that was the highlight of the whole experience, because for our kids, you know, they probably forgot what it was like to be in primary school, and also this games project was just one of many things that they do at school, but then to take them into the classroom and to see these little kids playing games, and they had to judge the games, it was excellent. Well, look, I think it's very basic in terms of the arts. It's all about creativity, it's all about group work, communication, design. So even though what they were doing was using technology, it was still those basic elements that they were being assessed on as well. Having fun. So yeah, that's what I would say. And also, obviously, for some kids, it was drawing on things that they can relate to in their lives. And so applying some of the knowledge that they know already into a particular product and promoting it. And I think the kids enjoyed it. So I think those things, when the kids enjoy something creative, they're learning from that process. And I think ultimately, when the kids went to visit the primary school, I think that also taught them a lot about how other people learn and how they learn themselves. They may not have, you know, been able to articulate it, but that's what I sort of thought. Yeah, my knowledge of games is very small, and I tried to teach myself a couple of the game making programs. I found it very difficult. So, and it was hard to try and explain that to the kids, take them through it. So that was very challenging. And I told them that. I said, look, I'm not experienced here. I can't, you know. So it was it was a very hands-off approach. I was more of maybe a guide, but just there to offer them advice, feedback. But I was also learning as well. And that's the great thing about being a teacher. It's not just about standing up and telling kids what to do. And yeah. So the challenges were, I think, not knowing the content very well, not knowing what the final outcome would be, whether the kids would enjoy the project, and constructing a project that the kids would be engaged with. All of this was done in Year 9 media, so they were 14, 15-year-old kids. Last year I also did a project in Year 8 drama, which was focused on gaming as well. So, you know, junior school, middle school. Well, look, some of the kids worked by themselves, some of them worked together in groups. With the Year 9 media kids, there were some kids who obviously weren't interested in gaming at all, and I can understand that, you know, so they found it difficult. There are other kids who there was a girl, Anastasia, who made a game, and, you know, she just took to it. She flew. She loved obviously trying to build a game by using this software. And I don't know if she already knew that she liked making games, but she certainly was focused and achieved something. Determination. But definitely collaboration, working with friends, is a key thing. Being able to work with somebody on a project is a great thing because you share the experience and the success with them, especially if it's done really well. With Anastasia, she was very focused, and occasionally, I can't remember really, but she may have asked me one or two things, but generally she tried to solve the problems herself. You know, she was very independent, and it was just very, I was very impressed with her, particularly because I don't think she knew about this program. There was another student in the class who had used the program before, excuse me, had played with it before and created a good game, but she was in a way more impressive because she went home and worked on it, and it was a real challenge for her, and it was all, as you said, it was all internalised. She wanted to try and figure it out herself, whether she went on to YouTube and did, self-help videos, and like anything at school, there will be some kids that are interested in the topic. Because gaming is almost universal, or most kids play games, so the question is whether they want to do a school project on it. That's a separate thing. And for some kids, they enjoyed it. There were a group of girls who did the documentary, and I think they loved going around the school interviewing people, teachers, their parents, and then coming back and trying to put it together in a editing program and learning how to do that. And again, getting some advice from me, but also being independent enough to create something themselves and trying to make it look professional. So that's what I would observe. It was like a normal class, any other class, because there were options that kids could choose from. It wasn't just one particular project. They had a couple of options. This meant that kids could be challenged if they wanted to be challenged, or feel comfortable by working with another group, or just go along as they went along, I suppose. Yeah, I'm going to continue working with a games unit in drama because I think it was quite good, and it can be quite effective. I haven't taught media this year, so but I will next semester, and I'd like to try it again because, with anything in teaching, once you've done it once, you learn a lot from the experience, and it's always good to do it a second time because you can build on that experience. So I think I'd like to try it again and see what else I can do differently and improve on it. As far as, I haven't really thought about it any more than that, I would say, Okay, in drama, so basically Year 8 drama, the kids were looking at a games unit, and we did some introductory activities, warm-up activities, because you play a lot of games in drama, not necessarily related to computer games, but games in general. But the basic structure of a game is very similar. There's challenges, usually somebody is the winner at the end. You might play a character. If you're not playing a character, it's, you want to try and win. Sometimes you play in a team or you play by yourself. So we played a few different games, not really mentioning that we were doing a games unit. This led on to more specific activities to do with gaming, where the kids might play a shoot 'em up game. So they're walking around the classroom and with music, and a kid might have a pretend gun, and then they have to kill somebody on the floor, and kid pretends to die, something like that. Or like a slow motion relay race where the kids are pretend athletes and they're in a race, but it's all done in slow motion, and the winner is the person who doesn't get to the finish line, but the slowest person. Anyway, this leads further into a sort of improvised play where the kids have to develop a piece based on a couple of options. One was adults against gaming, teenagers in support of gaming, a young person who gets stuck in a game, and a group of people, young people who develop a game. And so they develop a number of scenes that tell a story based around one of those titles, and then they present it to the class. And that's it, pretty much, yeah. So I've talked a little bit about educational games. We've looked at a few educational games, and kids sort of like it, but in some ways they don't like it unless it's a really good game. So I think kids are open to looking at educational games and analysing games. I think the highlight for the project for me was going on that visit to Fitzroy North Primary School, and it was a real fantastic experience, and it would be good, I think, for that to happen more often, for older learners to see how younger learners learn and to mentor, and so that was a real, it was an awesome experience. I think maybe if the project was to happen again, maybe there could be more definitive guidelines about what sort of things the university is looking for in terms of the projects that they want teachers to institute or develop, because it was very open, and which is great, but I wonder whether there should be stricter guidelines about what they want to investigate. So that's something that I probably would think that could happen in the future. It's certainly an area, it's a fascinating area, and to investigate. And I got kids to do surveys, and so there's definitely scope for it. It'd be interesting to see whether it becomes more mainstream, like studied in English, for example, at higher levels. That would be interesting. Maybe more PD in terms of that, because if it was to be a text, how would you teach it? How could you teach a text, a game text? Like a movie you can watch for 2 hours and then you can discuss it, but how would you do that with a game? It would be interesting. So, yeah. It was good when we had the PD days with Joanne to see and hear what other teachers were doing, and they were mainly primary school teachers. So I think Kew was the only secondary school, so they obviously were able to share more resources with each other because they're all primary school teachers. But it was interesting just to hear them talk about it. I think you hear lots of teachers saying, kids are very tech savvy and they know a lot about technology because they all have mobile phones now. But when doing a project like this, a lot of kids found using Photoshop, for example, challenging, because it is a challenging program, not easy to use. But once you teach kids in an instructive way, those kids that enjoy using those sorts of programs can excel in them. But then there are lots of kids who found it challenging, difficult. A program like Game Maker, which is not easy to use even for an adult, a lot of kids found very challenging because it's more programming based and it's sort of very finicky. So I think generally, kids found technology to be quite challenging. Learning an editing program, lots of steps, and the kids that made the videos, I think, used Premiere, and when you use a program like that for the first time, you look at it and you go, what do I do? Where do I find this and that? And for a lot of kids who have phones, they just press a button and suddenly appears. But with these more comprehensive programs, it's not that straightforward. So it was challenging for some kids, but those kids have persevered, did well, and hopefully they learned some skills from it that they can use in other subjects or in other places in their life. Maybe they won't use them ever again, I don't know. So if we had more time, then they would have more opportunity to develop those skills further and feel more confident with it. But you know, we opened a window for them to see what it's like to make a game or make a short video or construct a cover, and the kids did good work overall. But I would agree that even though we're living in an age where technology is everywhere, lots of kids found using programs challenging. Yeah. How to adapt to technological change, because it's changing so much. And what I'm finding is that the teacher's becoming less the person at the front telling the kids what to do, and it's more about establishing some sort of project and then letting the kids run with the project, and you're there to act as a helper, a guide. And in most cases, your knowledge base is equal to them or maybe even a bit lower. And so, you know, if I'm teaching Photoshop, I want to make sure that I know how to use the program up to a certain point. Obviously, there are going to be kids who know the program better than me, and they can teach you a lot of things about it. So in a subject like media, which is an arts-based subject, we try and teach it like it would be done in the industry, in your industry, as project-based. I'm not sure how to see it. I'm not sure where it's going. Maybe in a few years' time, there won't be teachers in the classroom anymore. You know, who knows? Maybe it'll be, you know, Skyping, or who knows how it will work. But I think kids do want an adult in the room. You know, they can YouTube video, you know, how-to videos at home, how to make a game at home on YouTube, or how to learn how to play this riff on the guitar. But having an adult in the room makes a big difference. Even if the adult doesn't say very much, they're there as a presence. So yeah, be open, be positive. If you were like me, who had very limited knowledge, do a bit of research, but think about your own personal experiences, because kids really are engaged when the teacher relates their own personal experiences to whatever project or content it is, and then go from there. So yeah, I think that's how I approached it. But everyone's different, you know.